You guys remember the hi developer perspective here? This is who we're talking to right now. And this tweet, a lot of people responded to this. A lot of people responded to this. I'll let you take it away. Wherever you want to
Yeah,
start,
no, of
just go
course.
ahead.
First off, this tweet was in a way designed to be incendiary. Like I knew that by wording it this way, I was going to get the most amount of engagement. So there's like a tiny bit of trolling in here. Ultimately, the point I was trying to come across is like I've been a game developer for a long time, let's say almost 14 years now. Bunch of different games. So I've seen how game development has changed over a long time. Tekken, I've been playing since Tekken 2. So I'm familiar with the franchise, but from an outside perspective. I actually agree with everyone who was upset. Everyone was super upset
Yeah.
with the fact that they didn't get the stage as part of a season pass, which I think that's fair. You're fair to be upset about that. I
Yeah.
don't think I conveyed that message properly, that it sucks that that didn't happen. And my message, really, the tone of my message was, by the way, you're bombing a game and is ultimately trying to garner more players. There might be a better way of getting what you want without bombing the game, because this game is the biggest bet that Harad has probably ever had to have. And we're no longer in a phase of game development where you get to have a failure and come back. That just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
There's been a ton of times where you're like, oh, Devil May Cry 1, great. Devil May Cry 2 was considered a critical failure. Then that's fine. We'll just win it back on Devil May Cry 3. Those days are gone, finished. You're playing around with too many hundreds of millions now. That's why I don't think we're ever going to see Dead or Alive back. And I don't believe we're ever going to see Soul Calibur back in the same way that it was. The only people I've seen it kind of win it back somewhat is Killer Instinct, but they made the entire game DLC. Like you had to pay for pretty much every character.
And going that route is like pretty controversial as well. Like when like multiverses, like you get 4 characters, or I think you get 1 character actually, and the other 4
Yeah,
rotate.
they're paying
That's
for
something
everything.
that like people get upset about too.
I truly agree that it's not the players' fault that this is happening. They shouldn't have to be in a situation where they feel like they've been fooled or tricked. But I was also saying you guys are gonna probably feel it the most if this game's growth is affected by this review bombing.
Yeah, because a
Um,
review bomb is a very like that's a very crazy thing. Like with the Chinese player being banned, I think it was kind of justified. But with the
yeah.
stage, I feel like that was more so players just frustrated about the whole thing. Like players was like, I'm sick of it, and they took to the review.
I get it. I just don't think it's worth 0 stars on Steam because of
Yeah,
that. Like that was my point. It doesn't make any sense. So I understand that they're uninterested in the financial realities. They don't care. They don't care. I was like, okay, you don't care, but like I think you should consider it just to keep everything in context. There was another point as well about like, we can't. No one seems to be able to figure out Harada's true numbers about the how much an environment costs or
yeah,
a stage
yeah.
cost. Where it was anywhere between like I don't know, 300K to I saw 450K. Wherever it is, it's a hell of a lot more than it ever has been.
Yeah.
It's definitely a communication issue because yes, you're creating a crazy amount of content and then giving it away for free might actually affect the health of the game overall. Also, how they're conveying it is, they gave the story away for free, but no one cares about that. Technically, the story should have been the $5 thing. Anytime I've worked with someone like PlayStation or Microsoft or any like main publisher, before that decision is made, you have to look at the metrics of how many people are engaged in the thing that you're about to price. And so if there was a situation where they was like, okay, maybe we want to price it so that we pay for the new story mode, they might have looked at it and be like, well, only 8% of players are playing story mode.
Yeah.
So if we price the $5 story mode, maybe only 8% of people will bother to pay for it. Whereas we know for a fact people are really engaged in rank, quick match. They want to see all the players and see all the stages. And so there may have been a publisher decision or a marketing decision that is actually probably out of Harada's hands completely, where he's just like, here's it all packaged up. Here's the finished stage. Here's the finished story mode. And they're like, cool, we'll handle it from here. That may have been a decision that like kind of screwed them over.
And that was the thing too. Like right now, I'm showing on the screen a poll where I asked people if how they liked the story, and a lot of people, 32%, said that they didn't even play it or watch it. And that's like exactly what you're talking about. It's like if they sold it as
Right.
$5, like the number of people who did play it would be lower, if the $5
Yes.
was being requested. So it does make sense that they went for the stage. It's a smarter decision, but it's kind of not, because like it's a stage and all the past stages before were either tied with a character or a pass,
Yeah.
or it was free. So I get why they went with it, but it just kind of missed that, like, but also, do you think if they said before, like, this is $5 separate, do you think they would have got review bombed for that? Because I think it would have ended the same way. It definitely would
I
have.
suspect it. I suspect it would have. I don't think that would have mattered.
Yeah,
I think even if they told you before, I don't think it would have mattered. People were upset. We were upset. You know,
yeah,
there's a big problem in the industry. Like we've constantly been having this discussion. Like I was at a PlayStation Summit last year, and it was like literally every single person from a major PlayStation studio was there, and the biggest discussion was everything's costing so much, and we still need to make a profit. Because one of the big things I was trying to get across was like it costs $40 for Tekken 2, or $40 to $50 for Tekken 2,
yeah,
and Tekken 8 is $50 to $60.
yeah,
But the price of the game is 10, 20, 30 times more to develop. Basically, I agree with the players. They kind of got screwed over, and I think the situation too has made it that the publishers they're kind of almost forced to do some screwy stuff. Everyone lost out. Everyone
yeah,
lost out.
yeah. It's a lose
Nobody
lose.
won. The reason why I was saying review bombing as well is a bit different for fighting games than other games is Helldivers 2 was already profitable in the first 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So it's like review bomb away. It's fine, whatever. You're not gonna probably affect the health of the IP overall. I don't know if people realize the effect that these things can affect on a fighting game. Fighting games basically didn't exist until Street Fighter brought it back. Fighting games were kind of just like they went away for a while, right? And
yeah,
it wasn't until like Street Fighter had to prove this stuff back. It's just much more sensitive than any other IP, and it's also the reason why only Riot as a new publisher has made an attempt to enter the fighting game space with 2XKO.
yeah,
Every other Western publisher won't touch it. Multiverses was an example, but I kind of don't include that because it's basically a free to play game where you pay for absolutely everything. That's not a true fighting game, in my opinion.
yeah.
You
It's
know,
different.
you can't create a real like community where everything must be paid for, every character must be. That doesn't make any sense. Whereas 2XKO only exists with Riot because, well, frankly, League of Legends earns them $2 billion every single year, so they can make that bet.
Yeah,
No one else can do that.
yeah.
But I don't know. What's your opinion?
On the topic of the Steam review bomb, I do wonder how this will pan out in the long run, because this is a very like impulsive like thing. It's like the players are upset, it's an attack, but it's at a mostly negative, and people who see either a DLC character or who see like any type of advertisement for this game, when they go to purchase it and they see this mostly negative, that will be a big thing that stops a lot of people from getting in. And when you talk about fighting games being like this kind of small thing, that's something that they cannot have, is like this huge wall of negative reviews. And you would have to imagine too, every time something happened, people are going to run back to the Steam reviews and hit it again. And I think doing that over and over and over whenever you're upset, it may not, turn out the way that you want it to. It will have very negative consequences. I think King J is thinking like not just about the stage, but like the overarching, impact that it's going to have.
One thing I really want to stress is people keep like saying like, "Don't worry, Tekken will come back." The game has been bad. It's like, I promise you, the games industry has never existed in a space like this before, where you will not see a sequel if you don't have player growth. People acted like you was always gonna see Soul Calibur, you was always gonna see Dead or Alive. Even before that, we lost Bloody Raw because they could never get the player growth. I don't care how big you think Tekken is.
It's
Once you
not
start
guaranteed.
dealing with hundreds of millions, and even if the company's profitable, like the overall publisher is profitable, and they're like, well, Bandai Namco is making like billions. That has nothing to do with the product's profit. It's like just because Sony's doing great, that doesn't say they're doing fantastic. PlayStation's doing brilliant. Oh, we sold like 1 million PlayStation 5s. That's okay, fine. But if Concord doesn't sell, we're never gonna let you make a kind of game like that again. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to convey that like when you're actually in the industry and you see discussions like, oh yeah, no, they're gonna fix the game and we're gonna get Tekken 9 and we're gonna get Tekken 10. It's not guaranteed. No way. I promise you, it's not
Yeah,
guaranteed.
and that's what I try
Like,
to highlight as well. Like, Tekken players, Tekken 7 was very successful. It was record breaking. And a lot of people like look at that as like, oh, we're untouchable. But people forget, the game right before that, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, like it put the game in a very like dangerous spot. And
yeah.
if you think about how much they invested into Tag 2, marketing, trailers, putting all of those characters in the game, combos, like they did a lot to make that game what it was. And you can look at Tekken 8 and say they're doing it again with the heat, with the trailers, with the graphics. If they don't make their money off of it, it will go down as a huge like problem, and Bandai Namco will be very hesitant to allow to greenlight a Tekken 9. It's not guaranteed like that.
People think like, oh, it's fine. Tekken will be here forever. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But I've been in those rooms before
Yeah.
where something that's huge you think's gonna be around forever. They're just acting like, well, is it financially viable? No, like.
And this is
Sorry, it's just too big of a risk. Yeah. Look, someone's even mentioned like you're talking about this like it hasn't been solved. The T7 model worked, the T8 model isn't. I agree. I totally agree. But Tekken 7 was on a very different console and probably had a very different price set. I suspect that Tekken 8 is upwards of $70 million. Like that's really on the low end. That's a very low end. But with Tekken 7, they were literally using Tekken 6 models and Tekken Tag 2 models
yeah,
in the game, and their animation sets were the same. It was probably made so much cheaper than people imagined.
cutscenes
Whereas
in
with
the
Tekken 8, they tried
story
to go back.
and like narrator in the story, like instead of Tekken 8, which is like a full movie.
Exactly. Like the cost of that is exponentially more expensive.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Tekken 7 model would have made Tekken 8 profitable. I think they needed to be even more aggressive because it's a more expensive game. Like I think all the players are right. This is kind of messed up. It could be improved. I was just trying to give the point of view that like, hey man, like to be some sort of like give and take, and hopefully we can figure it out.
Oh, the question I was going to ask is, do you think that Tekken 8, where their initial mistake was investing all of this money into it? Like if they did like Tekken 7 where they had a low budget, then they wouldn't need to make that. Do you think that's the way forward for fighting games?
I'm not going to act like I know and I don't have the answers. I can only respect the problem. The
Yeah.
problem you have is you had Tekken 6, Tekken Tag 2, and Tekken 7 didn't really look different enough. In my opinion, it didn't look like massively different. We're 2 generations a jump now. Now, if people want to pay money for something, they're not going to be okay with those same models. You need to be serious about graphical intensity, intensiveness, especially when you got Street Fighter coming out and Street Fighter's looking pretty good, like, and they're refreshing their look. So
Yeah.
it was always going to be expensive for them to decide to not take the old models and like redo everything. But then you have to think that the growth is the most important thing. Like I said, no matter what you decided to do, if you're going to make a Tekken 8, it was going to be many more times expensive than Tekken 7. You was never going to get away from that. That's just the reality of the situation. I don't think people would have played Tekken 8 and it look exactly the same and be happy. So you have a more expensive title, but now you need to go off the fact that Tekken 7, I think so, like 12 million or 11 million. I'm sure someone said, well, you need to sell more you need to sell more on the next one because it's going to be more expensive. I personally feel like that would have been their goal. And the only way to really, it's been shown, is to get more players in fighting game is to create more spectacle. It's rarely because the game is better.
Them trying to bring in a lot of players, people credit Tekken 7's success with guest characters, right? So I wonder if that's the way forward, is like, just pump a lot of guest characters into Tekken 8 and then boom, 12 million copies.
I think there is some truth to that. I personally believe that the reason 12 million players went to Tekken 7 is because of Noctis and Akuma more than it was for the new DLC characters that they created. Maybe except Leroy. Leroy is like freakishly popular for some reason.
Leroy
He's
is
like crazy.
insane.
But for the most part, people aren't going to be like, oh, that Lucky Chloe looks interesting. I'm going to, buy that. Like, that's probably not going to get the new players.
Yeah.
So I think there is something to be said from guest players being more important. That's probably partially why they went for high. Heihachi too, because it was like guest characters or classic characters that you have seen or played when you was a kid or whatever it was are probably selling the game more than others. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't like to speculate too much about
Yeah.
like should they have been cheaper or should they have done that? Because we're kind of in this situation now, right? And then I guess the real thing is if we're gonna review bomb or we're gonna be writing negative reviews, we better be just as loud when they do things right.
That's what I say too. Is like, you know, so Harada's apology, and then Harada's saying he's gonna try to get more like those things. I try not to just be like okay, he's doing like I try to like say like, oh, like, you know, credit to Harada, he's doing this, or credit to them. That's something that I
Yeah,
feel like players do not do. Like they will be upset, but when it's time to be happy, they just don't. And I try to be vocal about this was a
yeah,
good thing, and I feel like
yeah,
players have to have that same like thing as well. So I think you're
yeah.
100% right there.
I
Yeah, I
really consider
appreciate
it.
you coming on and you know, sharing your perspective.
No problem. Yeah, I love what you do as well, man. Just keep doing it. I appreciate all your videos, even when you're ranting. It's good.
Yeah.